So, there's a lot of backstory behind this. A lot of backstory. About 2012, 2013, I actually designed a guitar that was intended to be used by Ibanez. About 2016, Blackheart guitars came out with this same shape as a signature model for somebody, and they deemed it the Hex. A few years ago, I'm not sure who did it first, but Jackson and Schecter both came out with a very similar body style. But I just wanted it on the record that I'm the first to do it. And so, as a form of both a science experiment and a form of, wouldn't say redemption, but redemption, I've decided to go and test out a little thing. So what I got here is a big old box. Inside my big old box, I have a lot of questions. I'm sure everybody else has a lot of questions. So we're gonna see what happens whenever you get a clone guitar off of eBay. There it is. Open in a box. It's just a big box. That is just a big box. Oh. It's beautiful.
I think so too.
Not that.
Can I open the door?
You can if you'd like, but you can't get mad.
I can't what?
So
What the f?
I just said you can't get mad if you open the door. You did this to yourself. It's mind-blowing. It's actually very accurate to what the actual Schecter model is. It even has the branding, and it's not a Schecter. That's it's not expecting it. It's not in tune. I think the neck needs to be adjusted a little bit, or at least the action needs to be raised, but I'm going to set it up. But as for a first impression, the main thing that really has me concerned about this whole guitar is the electronics. So it's actually it's a neck through, not a set neck, it's actually neck through. So everything is actually pretty solid on this thing. I'm going to assume that's going to have ridiculous sustain, and if it doesn't... So here's the thing. So it said it was a Sustainiac pickup on it. But there's one thing that heavily concerns me about this. It's going to be really hard to see. So yes, it says Sustainiac there on this line, but down here it actually says EMG. So, one of two things is going on here. Either this is actually the single coil Sustainiac, or a similar model of course, with an EMG S-Series active, or it's just something completely cloned and different and they just went and threw an EMG branding on the cover. So whenever I start messing around with it, I might even open up the back, because it does have the, I wonder if it came with the 9-volt inside of it. Did not. Battery's not included. But I'm really curious to see how it plays. Because this is supposed to be I'm assuming that this is a clone of the EMG Apocalypse pickup with a Sustainiac. As for the EMG part, I'm just going to completely, until I decide if I like it or dislike it, I'm just going to let that slide. I'm not going to think about it, not going to overthink it, nothing. But I can already tell you, fake Floyd Rose, just after feeling it, fake Floyd Rose. That's a very light material. I'm assuming that this is going to be a fake Sustainiac pickup, on-off switch. These are only two-way toggle. So that tells me that one is on-off on this switch. Maybe sustain and harmonic. I don't know. I'm gonna have to play with it. course, these aren't going to be Floyd Rose locking nuts up here on the neck. That's going to be probably Gote, however you pronounce it, Geiger. One of those. They're not going to be legit. All of this is more than likely going to be clone parts. However, this is a guitar that I have waited over 10 years to have in my hands. And I'm going to start digging into it, messing around with it, and give my honest opinion on everything that's going on here. It's a kill switch. Okay, Sustainiac, fake. Does not work at all. It's almost like it's got a gain booster, but as for it being a Sustainiac, no, it does not hold that same sustain that like an actual Sustainiac would have. As for the action, awful. Action is awful. It needs a little bit of backbone. Kind of disappointed. It chugs. I mean, it doesn't sound bad. The only thing that it's really killing me with is the fret buzz on the top figures. Like, the bottom 3 strings are buzzing really badly against the frets. That's killing me. So I'm going to have to definitely add some backbow here. Upon playing with this, I mean, the action was extremely low, so it's got a little bit of fret buzz still. I actually adjusted the bridge. It's got the Schecter Floyd Rose design thing. Uses Floyd Rose patents. I don't think it's legit. Eventually I'm going to see... I'm actually going to take this apart soon. Go a little bit deeper in depth with the specifics of the electronics in here, because I've been a little bit suspicious. I actually pulled off the back cover earlier and made some discoveries on my own. So one of the reasons why I bought this was mostly for investigative purposes. I could have went out and spent $1,400 on an actual E-1, or I could have spent $300 with taxes and shipping included and get a Korean copy. And of course, on the surface, mahogany neck, mahogany body. It said ebony fretboard, but I'm assuming that this is actually ebonized rosewood just for price sake, or it's illegal ebony. Who knows? I know that was a thing for a while, but I mean on the surface it's pretty much a Schecter. Say pretty much. So pickups, double humbucker of course. I believe that this is either going to be a copy of the Seymour Duncan Invader SH8 or an Apocalypse 7. I think that's the ones that they're using now in the Schecters, the Apocalypse A7. I don't really follow Schecter like that. Now the thing that got me on the photos is it said that it had a Sustainiac pickup. I knew it couldn't have a Sustainiac pickup for the price point it was, because Sustainiac goes for half the cost of the damn guitar. So you'll see it here. The EMG branding down on this line, then up here Sustainiac. EMG does not make Sustainiac. There's never been a Sustainiac pickup with this cover on it. So I did a little bit of digging, and I haven't popped it open all the way yet to really confirm my suspicion, but what I'm kind of thinking is going on here is this is an EMG pickup cover on top of another one of these SH8 copies. Not sure yet. I'm going to actually dig into it because, like I said earlier, I started digging into the back of the guitar. So of course it's got battery cover or battery box already installed right here. I popped open this cover here just to look at the wiring to see how legit the Sustainiac was. So upon playing it, these are not 3-position, these are 2-position. One of these is on-off. One of these almost works like a gain booster. I'm not quite sure, but just the way that it sounded, it almost sounded like it was like a 5 decibel gain booster, and that the wiring inside also kind of gives me that suspicion as well. As for the 9-volt, it doesn't really seem like it goes, I mean it goes somewhere. It goes directly into the pot, so really it's almost like they're using the 9-volt as almost like a medium for like a makeshift gain booster, because there's like a 5 decibel increase whenever I mess with it whenever it's plugged in. But yeah, whenever I felt that it was a 2-position, I knew that there was something up. But I dug into the back. I don't think the pickups are actives. So the 9-volt definitely seems like that's actually acting as the gain booster. There was a resistor or capacitor back there, but I haven't dug into it that deep to figure it out. So in the next week, I'm going to actually be putting in an 8185 set in here, the Zach Wild set. Just because now I know that the Sustainiac is not real. This pickup, it's got some output to it, but it's not as high output as I want it to, especially for somebody who does a lot of pinch harmonics and just squealy wheelie automobiles. Especially now that I've got something with a Floyd design, kind of, as Floyd as it gets on something like this. But like I also said later on, I do want to replace it with an actual Floyd if the standoffs are the right size and the routing's right, which I think the routing is correct for a Floyd Rose. I just don't know about the standoffs for the posts. So, whenever I popped over them back, the first thing that got me, there is no PCB boards. So the controllers for the Sustainiac are not here. So even if this was like the Voyez or whatever it is you get off of eBay, the sustenance pickup they have on there, it's not even that. It's just a regular pickup. So if you go out and get one of these, I definitely get ready to test your tech work skills, because there's definitely a little bit of work that needs to be done. I need to add some front bow to the neck just because of how low the action is. Just maybe a half a round, just to get it to where it's like actually playable. It plays okay, but you can still get the fret buzz, and it's just super low action, especially for a jumbo fret. But yeah, I mean, so far for, really the guitar was $215 after tax and everything. It came out to right at $300. So for what I paid for it, I definitely feel like I got my money's worth out of it. It's a project guitar, but I mean, for $500-600, I've got me something that's going to have EMGs in both neck and bridge. Of course, I'm going to have to do something about these. I'm probably going to leave them in place just so there's no holes in the guitar, but those are pretty much going to be useless unless I decide to go out and get like the the toggle gain booster and maybe the toggle kill switch. I use a TKO switch on one of my guitars that I recently built, but haven't been a big fan of it. I mean, it's cool, but you just have to put so much input into it that it pretty much, it's not like the Buckethead arcade style ones, or the ones that people were putting on their Stratocasters back in like 2005. All those are a little bit more responsive than the TKO switch, at least in my personal experience. But it's cool to have just to play around with. And of course, some people do get super aggressive with their guitars, so some people might not even be that big of an issue. For me, I like to have the responsiveness, but it's just not as responsive as I'd like. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a good setup on this guitar, switch the strings out, because these are some really flimsy strings. I know just it's sitting for the past couple of days since I unboxed it. It's the actions came up just a little bit just from the string tension, but I do want to actually get a good setup on this so I can actually play it full time. Alright, so it's been a week. I've got 81, 85 set in here from the Zakk Wylde set, single volume, single tone, EMG toggle switch. For some reason I always have this issue where the neck pickup doesn't want to pick up, so for the time being it's just bridge only. I'll figure out the rest later. It could be a problem with the ground or something like that. I've always had this issue with whenever I do two pickups with this three-way switch. I don't know why, but I've done a little bit of adjusting. I did a truss rod adjustment just to give it a little bit of front bow. Got skinny top, heavy bottom strings on it, 10 to 52s. That's what I usually use if I'm not, using the DR UV strings. These toggles no longer work. They're just loosely in there, so there's no hole in the guitar. But yeah, about to give it a little play test and see how she shreds. Like I mentioned before, I'm not using an audio interface. I'm going straight into a Line 6 V1 Spider. Insane channel. I've got my settings pretty beefy. I really only played rhythm guitar. I don't really do leads. I got trigger finger, so it's hard for me to do that with pinky, but I mean, in conclusion, at least on this end, it actually sounds pretty good. It does have a little bit of trouble staying in tune. I think it has to do with the knockoff Floyd Rose that is also a knockoff of a Floyd Rose. It is a knockoff of a Schecter Floyd Rose. So it's not actually a knockoff of a Floyd Rose, it's a knockoff of a knockoff. With the 8185 set, has a lot more output, sounds pretty good with the heavier strings and the front bow that I added. It's got a lot higher action than what it did out of the box. The strings that were on it were maybe, I don't know, 9 to 46s or something like that, something close to like a Diodario medium heavy, somewhere in there, or even like a Ernie Ball hybrid string, but they were just way too light for this bridge. It definitely helped add that little bit of lift on the bridge side, so it helps it clear the frets a lot better. There's no more real fret buzz except for whenever you get super high up, but I think that has a lot to do with like my fingers and not being used to the jumbo frets or anything like that. This is also a lot longer scale length than what I'm used to. This is close to a baritone for me. I don't really play 24 frets often, so I'm still trying to get back into that. I mean, whenever I went to go wire everything up, everything was pretty straightforward for the most part. There was just enough space in there to, you know, wire in the electronics for 2 pickups that are both active, and the toggle switch, of course. So, I mean, I would definitely, if you were to get something like this, make sure you're ready to do some rewiring just to make sure everything sounds good on your end, get it all, you know, to your spec. One thing I did notice that kind of concerns me is this bridge stud up here actually goes into the Floyd Rose cavity. So I do have to worry about that kind of pushing out over time or even cracking. So I'm not going to be doing too many dive bombs. That's why I'm not really doing it here. Plus it doesn't like to really stay in tune that long. I don't know if it has to do with the springs that are on the trim, or if it has to do with the strings being new. So I'll probably play around with it a little bit more just to see if I can kind of fine tune. And of course I didn't put the truss rod cover back on because I had to do those fine adjustments on the truss rod. And I just don't feel like, you know, having to loosen up strings and then go back and put the cover back on and, you know, find out that I got to adjust it again. So, I mean, all in all, it's an okay guitar. I'm not going to say it's, you know, great. I'm not going to say you should go out and get one. But if you do want something that looks pretty, it looks pretty. Definitely looks pretty. Need to polish it again, but it looks pretty. And like I also said, I really only got this guitar mostly because, one, I was curious about the electronics, which we're about to talk about, and two, this is also the shape that I designed myself like back in 2012, 2013, and I just wanted to have one of the guitars. I wasn't really sure if I wanted the Schecter, the Phil Dimmel, or even the Blackheart, which I really didn't want the Blackheart. It seemed like it was oversized for what I had originally intended for it to be. Maybe in the future I'll get a real E-1, or even try to custom shop. Maybe have Warmoth custom shop one to my actual spec, or something like that, or even build one myself. But I mean, for the time being, it's a nice wall piece and something to play with every so often. And the Active 81, 85 set definitely made this guitar shine more than anything else. That and the truss rod adjustment. And in the future, I might try to put a real Floyd Rose on this, but just what I saw in the cavity, probably not happening. I'll probably just keep this on there until it decides to break. But yeah, we're going to talk about the electronics real quick and wrap up the video. So these are the electronics that I pulled out of it, the Jack 2. I mean, just on first impressions, like I can tell that some of this stuff, came off of Amazon or Etsy. But I mean, the tone pots, everything was wired good. The solder is pretty solid there. Didn't really have to worry about that. It's got a little capacitor in there. So somebody wired this, the classic way, and they did a pretty good job. There was no real interference or anything like that whenever I was adjusting the tone or the volume or anything like that. So, on that end, whoever put this together, they actually did it right with what they had. Now, the thing that got me more than anything was the pickups. So after doing a little bit of digging, the pink pickup here, this one is, of course, made in Korea, so it is a knockoff of an SH8 Invader pickup. So, I mean, it doesn't have anywhere near the output that an actual SH8 would have. So, I mean, be wary of that if you're going online trying to find, a good deal on Etsy or something. But what really got me was this, the Sustainiac pickup. The fake Sustainiac pickup. Of course, like I mentioned, it had the EMG badging there, and it really, whenever I started digging into this, I can tell you right now, it's a fake EMG that somebody just painted Sustainiac on. And so, that came straight from Korea like that. Somebody went on Etsy and got some cheap parts and just threw them in a guitar. I mean, it had some decent output, so if you're just trying to get a guitar working, maybe it's a good idea. But what really got me on this is whenever I pulled it out, this right here. Whoever is building these, they're using pretty much GMG's design on the solderless. It's literally the exact same for the most part, other than, the color's different, where the red wire is. That actually it should be actually, no, that is a red wire. These are active pickups. So it tells me that this is either a copy of an 85 or a 60, just based off the gold badge, and somebody just painted Sustainiac on it. There was no sustenance or anything like that. Of course, it's got your basic made in Korea badging, the ROSH, so or ROHS, so you can't really throw these away. They got lead solder in them. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed with this. I mean, it's impressive that somebody can reproduce something like this, but it's definitely not EMG quality, and it's definitely not Sustainiac quality. So just be wary whenever you're looking out on eBay. And what I say, buy this guitar. If you are willing to actually go onto eBay, get a cheap guitar, throw $200, $300 worth of electronics in it, and just build something up yourself, maybe it is a good idea for you. I mean, for what I paid in total in parts and shipping and the guitar itself, I probably spent maybe $600 in total, 550 somewhere in there, and an actual E-1 would have cost me over twice that much. So I did save a pretty penny, but the long-term cost of it, having to worry about the tremolo, having to worry about something going wrong with the build quality of the guitar, is it worth it? It's probably not a road-worthy guitar, but something to mess around with, in the studio or just at jam practice, anything like that, might be a good idea. But for the most part, this is probably going to end up as a wall piece in the future. So just be wary about what you buy on eBay. Of course, brands like, you know, Edwards, they're all right. I've seen a lot of people playing the Edwards Alexi Leo guitars, and that's kind of what, you know, sparked my interest as to why somebody would want to go online and buy a, you know, a fake guitar. But yeah, like I said, if you're going to buy something like this, you know, just be ready to work on it. Just be ready to work on it, because it's probably going to need some work right out the gate, especially if you're going to set up. I mean, if you were to take something like this Guitar Center, you'd be spending, you know, $75, $80 on a setup, have somebody professionally set it up for you, and then, you know, of course, the cost of strings, the cost of the parts that you want to throw into it, the labor, and then, you know, the lead times, because I know Guitar Center is usually 2 to 4 weeks out on their lead times. If you go to a mom and pop shop, it's probably going to cost you a little bit less, and you'll be getting it back a lot sooner, but they're probably going to tell you right out the gate this guitar isn't that great. I mean, I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to mess around with it, and I'm going to try to get it as, you know, good as I can, but for the time being, I can't really recommend it unless you are ready to take a financial dive. And my best advice in this situation is to find the real one. You might be able to find, you know, a used version of it on Guitar Center or Musician's Friend used, or even go to a pawn shop, but, you know, just get what you can get. If you want something very specific, you might as well go ahead and pay top dollar for what you want, or find it used. And I know this has been a little bit longer of a video than what I'm normally posting these days. Really haven't posted anything the past couple months because I've been, you know, just busy with work. That's why it took me, you know, over a week to make this video. But, you know, I'll be posting around as much as I can, maybe a little bit more guitar stuff. I'm going to be trying to get back into iRacing soon. It's just been really hard to find the time, and, you know, I've got a bass amp in the way, so it's going to make it a little bit difficult to do all that stuff, but, you know, I'm going to try to at least get some content out here. Not really focused on, like, you know, views or subs or anything like that anymore. I'm just kind of doing this as a hobby, and it's, you know, what I know. So, you know, I might as well go ahead and use some of the skills that I got. But alright, this has been Creeper. Subscribe if you want to, like it if you want to. If you hate me, leave a dislike, middle finger in the comments, you know. Have a good one.